So in 2018-19, I had an opportunity to do an ethnographic study to really try to understand the work of data scientists. In that ethnographic study, I was actually immersed in the workplace with data scientists for about 9 months. And I got a chance to observe them, to go to their group meetings, their different presentations that they made, both internal to the organization as well as external, and having lots of different informal conversations with them. Uh, Accompanied with that, I did interviews with 5 data scientists. They were not all from that particular organization, as well as I collected interviews that had been posted publicly on the website. And my goal was to really understand, what does it feel like to be a data scientist? What do they actually do on a day-to-day basis? And how could we learn from that to actually help frame the future of middle school and high school experiences with students to think about the career of a data scientist. So some of the things that I learned was that data scientists spend a lot of time thinking about the role of the context or the purpose of the problem that they're trying to solve. So they have clients that come to them and try to help them make sense of whatever data or problem that they have. And the data scientists actually spend a lot of time trying to understand that context and thinking about the purposes of what their client is hiring them to do. That also comes into play at the end when they're really trying to figure out how to communicate their findings so that there's actually actionable items that the company or the organization that hired them, their client, can actually take. And throughout their entire work, they are really working in a lot of flexible different ways. They have a healthy amount of skepticism. They work in teams. Data science is not an isolated process. There may be times when you're working by yourself, but a lot of the things that you're doing is integrating with the work that other people are doing on your team. They're constantly seeking out expertise when they run up against something, whether it's a technical issue or whether it's something about the context that they need to better understand. They're immersed in data constantly. They spend a lot of hours trying to make sense of data, trying to process that data, trying to organize it so that they can actually analyze it and build models. They're persistent, they're resilient. They told stories of how much they had to actually revisit a lot of the problems that they sometimes had to work on, throw out things that they had worked on for a while that didn't work, and persist through that. They learn how to communicate. They learn how to create visualizations. Oftentimes on data science teams, they actually have dedicated data visualists. So that's a particular career path that someone within data science can pursue. They're the ones in charge of making the final data visualizations that might be used on dashboards or in reports or in papers. And data scientists have a really broad toolkit. They know how to use a lot of different tools, and they go back and forth to using and integrating these tools whenever they are solving different problems. So a lot of this I used along with my colleagues to try to think about, well, how does that match what we have been doing for the past 20 years or so in K-12 education about engaging students in a statistical investigation. And these different phases of a statistical investigation, the diagrams that I have shown here, might look familiar to you. You may have seen something very similar to it in some of your curriculum materials. But you'll notice that some of the things that I was talking about, like spending so much time immersed in processing data, doesn't naturally kind of show up in these simple 4-phase cycles. So what my colleagues and I did was we proposed what we call a data investigation process that has 6 phases. And we tried to surface some of the processes that data scientists actually use so that they become more obvious and integrated into the experience of students. So this 6-phase process that we have here is much more holistic. It's nonlinear. So we used puzzle pieces to kind of communicate the emphasis that you really go back and forth, and that you might be exploring and visualizing data, for example, and you come across a question about a particular measure, and you have to go back to the phase of considering the data to really understand how a particular attribute maybe was measured, so that you build models that are appropriate for that particular measurement. And that might take you the whole way back to framing your problem and really understanding your context a little bit better. So there's a lot of back and forth in this that is much more reflective of the practices in the real world than perhaps a linear cycle might indicate. So what we do in some of our work is that we take this framework and we actually break it down into some sub pieces so that students and teachers can get a sense of what's actually involved in each of these different phases. And what's showing here on the screen is a particular poster that we put together, a handout that teachers and students can use to kind of refer to when they are doing data investigations. Down at the bottom, you'll notice that some of those key considerations and dispositions are there. For example, you have to make sense of data with respect to the context, always keeping that the context of the data, the phenomena that you're studying in the forefront of your mind. Taking advantage of technology tools so that you are flexible in that. Down at the end, being able to consider ethical issues and biases that might be in your data. That's something that came across a lot with data scientists and what they are really trying to think about when they're working with data. And being a skeptic, having a healthy amount of skepticism that can help one approach data in a healthy way. Not just believe everything that you perhaps see in data.